The phone rang at 2:17 a.m., shattering the silence of my Austin apartment like glass hitting concrete. When you get a call at that hour, your heart already knows something terrible has happened. The voice on the other end belonged to Dr. Sarah Martinez from STT, Augustine Memorial Hospital in Georgia. Miss Holston, I'm calling about your grandfather, William. He's suffered a massive stroke. You need to know he may not survive the night. The words hit me like a freight train. I am Victoria Holston, 28 years old, a home designer who builds sanctuaries for families, spaces meant to hold decades of laughter and love. But in that moment, sitting on my bedroom floor in pajamas, nothing in my career had prepared me for the possibility of losing the man who built my world. William Holston wasn't just my grandfather, he was my foundation. When my parents were too consumed with climbing corporate ladders and attending networking events, Grandpa was the one teaching me life's essential lessons. He showed me how to grip a hammer properly before I could tie my shoes, how to see the beauty in creating something with your own hands. His workshop smelled of sawdust and possibility, and his kitchen always had fresh cookies cooling on wire racks. I was on the next flight out, my hands shaking as I booked the ticket. As the plane lifted off from Austin, I texted my father, Grandpa had a stroke. He might not make it. Are you coming? His response came an hour later, not words of concern or travel plans, but a photograph. My family lounging on pristine white sand, tropical drinks in hand, faces glowing with vacation bliss. The caption read, "Family time in Sarasota, finally relaxing." My stomach turned to ice. While Grandpa lay fighting for his life, they were building sandcastles. St. Augustine Memorial Hospital felt like entering a different universe, one where hope and despair live side by side in fluorescent lit corridors. The ICU smelled of industrial disinfectant mixed with an underlying scent I'd later learn was fear. It seeps into the walls when families gather to say goodbye. Room 314. That's where I found him. The man who had seemed invincible throughout my childhood lay diminished against stark white sheets, his body connected to a symphony of machines that beeped, whirred, and breathed for him. 4 tubes snaked from his arms like translucent lifelines. The ventilator forced his chest to rise and fall in mechanical rhythm, a sound that would haunt my dreams for months afterward. His hands, those magnificent hands that had taught me to paint fence posts and braid my hair, lay motionless at his sides. The calluses earned from decades of honest labor were still there, but the strength seemed to have drained away like water through sand. I collapsed into the vinyl chair beside his bed, the kind of furniture designed for function rather than comfort. My fingers found his, wrapping around them desperately, hoping my touch might somehow anchor his spirit to this world. "I'm here, Grandpa," I whispered, my voice cracking. "I'm not going anywhere, I promise." The promise felt sacred, like an oath spoken in a cathedral. That first phone call to my father revealed everything I needed to know about priorities. Beach sounds and laughter created a soundtrack of betrayal as I tried to explain the gravity of the situation. "Dad, he's on life support. The doctors say it's touch and go. When are you coming back?" A pause, ice clinking in glasses. The sound of vacation continuing without conscience. "Vic, we just got here. Everything's booked and non-refundable. You're there, that's what matters. Just keep us updated, okay? This isn't a business conference, Dad. It's Grandpa. He raised me when you were too busy. Look, someone has to be with him. You're doing great. We'll visit when we get back." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, understanding with crystal clarity that I was truly alone in this fight. That night, I made a bed out of that uncomfortable chair, pulling a thin hospital blanket over my shoulders. The ICU never truly sleeps, nurses pad. Through hallways in rubber-soled shoes, monitors beep constantly, and somewhere down the hall, another family was probably getting news that would change their lives forever. I talked to Grandpa through those long hours, filling the silence with memories and mundane details. I told him about the Victorian house I was renovating in Austin, how I'd finally gotten the crown molding perfect after 3 attempts. I described the basil plant on my kitchen windowsill that had just started sprouting tiny leaves. I confessed that I'd burned another attempt at his famous lasagna recipe, the one he'd tried to teach me a dozen times. "The secret is patience, Vicky," he'd always said. "Good things take time." Days blurred into an exhausting routine. Morning rounds at a.m., when doctors would examine him with practiced efficiency, speaking in medical terminology that felt like a foreign language. Afternoon visits from respiratory therapists adjusting ventilator settings. Evening medication reviews that offered no promises, only careful monitoring. The nurses became my allies in this vigil. Patricia, the day shift supervisor, would bring me coffee without being asked. Miguel, who worked nights, always took extra time explaining Grandpa's vital signs, translating medical jargon into hope I could understand. He's a fighter, Miguel told me one particularly dark night. I can see it in his readings. Don't give up. But the hardest moments came when my phone buzzed with updates from paradise. More photos arrived daily, my parents and sister Talia snorkeling in crystal clear water, dining at beachfront restaurants, exploring local markets. Each image felt like a slap across the face. The most painful was a family selfie in front of a spectacular sunset. My father's arms wrapped around my mother and sister, all three beaming at the camera. Talia had posted it on Instagram with the caption, "Family is everything." #blessed, #vacation vibes family time. I stared at that post until my vision blurred with tears. Family is everything. Then why was I the only one who stayed? Day 12 arrived gray and drizzling, matching my emotional state perfectly. I hadn't slept more than 2 hours, dozing fitfully in that punishing chair with my neck twisted at an impossible angle. The constant hum of the air conditioning had become a lullaby of exhaustion. I developed a morning ritual, reading aloud from Grandpa's favorite poetry collection, a leather-bound volume I'd rescued from his study before rushing to the hospital. The pages were yellowed with age, filled with his penciled notes in the margins, observations, questions, connections he'd made between verses and life. That morning, I opened to Robert Frost. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. That's when it happened. The slightest movement, so subtle I almost missed it. His fingers twitched against mine, not a reflex or muscle spasm, but something deliberate, a squeeze, gentle but unmistakable. My heart nearly exploded. "Grandpa, can you hear me?" His eyelids fluttered like butterfly wings testing the wind. Then, slowly, like sunrise breaking over a mountain horizon, his eyes opened. They were cloudy and unfocused at first, but unmistakably alive. And they were looking directly at me. The tears came so fast I could barely see. I pressed my forehead against his knuckles, sobbing with relief and joy and gratitude all tangled together. "You came back," I choked out. "You really came back." He couldn't speak yet, the ventilator made that impossible, but his eyes crinkled at the corners in a way I recognized. He was still in there. My grandfather, my teacher, my protector, was still fighting. I hit the call button for the nurse, my hand shaking so badly I nearly missed it. Within seconds, the room filled with medical professionals, their excitement barely contained behind professional demeanor. "This is excellent news," Dr. Martinez said, checking his pupil responses. "He's responding to stimuli, following commands with his eyes. It's a very positive sign." Later that day, after the medical team had stabilized him and adjusted his treatment plan, I stepped into the hallway and called my father again. My hands were steady now, my voice clear. "Dad, he's awake." He opened his eyes this morning and recognized me. "You need to come home." Another pause. I heard pool sounds in the background this time. "Wow, that's really good news, Vic. Great job staying with him. You can come back now," I repeated. "He's conscious. He knows I'm here, and I think he'd want to see you." "Well, we've only got 3 days left on the resort package. Let him rest, you know? We'll come by when we get back home." The casual tone in his voice, the complete lack of urgency, hit me like a physical blow. "He almost died, Dad. For 2 weeks. I watched machines keep him alive while you were taking selfies with coconuts, and you were there for him." "That's enough." The line went dead again. This time, I wasn't surprised. 2 weeks after that miraculous morning, Dr. Martinez finally delivered the news I'd been praying for. He's stable enough for discharge, but he'll need comprehensive care, physical therapy, occupational therapy, and assistance with daily activities until he regains more strength. "I'll take care of everything," I said without hesitation. The decision had been made the moment I stepped off that plane from Austin. The day we left the hospital felt like a resurrection. I wheeled Grandpa through the automatic doors into warm Georgia sunshine, watching him close his eyes and breathe deeply, his first taste of unfiltered air in a month. The breeze lifted his thinning silver hair, and I swear I saw the ghost of his old smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "I'm taking you home," I whispered, pushing his wheelchair toward the specialized transport van I'd rented. "Your garden's probably gone wild without you to tend it," he nodded weakly, and I felt hope unfurling in my chest like spring flowers. Breaking through winter soil, the drive through familiar neighborhoods should have been a homecoming parade. I navigated streets I'd known since childhood, past the elementary school where Grandpa had picked me up every day, past the corner market where he'd buy me penny candy on special occasions, but something was wrong the moment we turned onto Maple Street. The front gate to Grandpa's property, his sanctuary for over 40 years, stood wide open. A silver sedan I didn't recognize sat in the driveway where his old pickup truck should have been. The curtains in the front windows were drawn tight, blocking out the morning light that Grandpa cherished. My hands began to shake on the wheelchair handles as we approached the front door. "There must be a mistake," I murmured, more to convince myself than anyone else. "Maybe someone's house sitting. Maybe there's been a misunderstanding." A young woman answered my knock, her expression polite, but confused. She was probably my age, wearing paint-stained clothes and holding a coffee mug that said "Home Sweet Home." "Can I help you?" she asked. "I'm Victoria Holston," I managed to say. "This is William Holston. This is his home." Her face fell. Behind her, a man appeared, her husband or boyfriend, carrying renovation supplies. They exchanged a meaningful look that made my stomach clench with dread. "Oh God," the woman said softly. We bought this house last week. From Martin Holston." He said he had power of attorney. Everything was legal. We had no idea. The world tilted on its axis. "Martin Holston is my father." The man produced a folder of paperwork, his expression genuinely apologetic. "I'm so sorry. If we had known there was family who didn't know about the sale." But everything was verified through the county office. The power of attorney documentation looked legitimate. I felt Grandpa's breath hitch behind me. When I turned, his eyes were wide with shock and pain, his hands gripping the wheelchair arms until his knuckles turned white. My house," he whispered, the first words he'd spoken since the stroke. I knelt beside him, my own voice breaking. "I didn't know, Grandpa. I swear I didn't know he would do this." The garden that had been his pride and joy was gone, replaced with landscaping that belonged in a magazine spread. The wind chimes he'd hung on the porch, the ones I'd made for him in third-grade art class, had vanished. Even the mailbox he'd painted every spring had been replaced with something sleek and modern. They had erased 40 years of his life in a week. That night, in a modest hotel room, while Grandpa slept fitfully in an adjustable bed, I opened my laptop and began investigating. The digital paper trail painted a picture of calculated betrayal that made my blood run cold. The property transfer documents showed my father's signature alongside a power of attorney form dated 2 years earlier. I remembered that day now. Dad had come to visit, carrying official-looking papers and speaking in soothing tones about being prepared for emergencies. "It's just in case something happens, Vic. With Grandpa getting older, we need to be ready. To help with medical decisions, insurance claims, that sort of thing." Medical decisions. Not selling his home out from under him while he fought for his life, but the power of attorney was comprehensive, granting full financial and property control. At the next morning, I was on the phone with Harrison and Bielli, the family's longtime legal firm. Helen Bielli, one of the founding partners, had known our family for decades. Her voice carried a weight of sadness and disappointment when I explained why I was calling. "Victoria, I was afraid you'd find out this way. I knew about the sale, but Martin didn't involve our firm. He worked with a different company. Quick, quiet, minimal oversight. Can you help me understand what happened? Come in this afternoon. There are some things you need to see." Helen's office felt like a sanctuary of justice, with law books lining the walls and the scent of leather and integrity filling the air. She placed a thick folder on the mahogany table between us. "This is the original power of attorney your grandfather signed," she said. I advised against granting such broad authority, but William insisted. "Martin's my son," he told me. "He would never hurt me." The documents revealed the scope of the betrayal. The house had been sold for $295,000, at least $150,000 below market value according to recent comparable sales. It was a cash transaction with minimal inspection period, designed for speed rather than fair value. "Where did the money go?" I asked. Though I already dreaded the answer, Helen handed me bank statements. Every penny had been wired directly into an account bearing only my father's name. Not a trust fund for Grandpa's care, not even a joint account, just Dad's personal checking account. "This is theft," I said, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. Legally, it's more complicated, Helen replied. The power of attorney was valid, and the sale followed proper procedures. But if we can prove abuse of fiduciary duty, especially during your grandfather's incapacitation, you may have grounds for a lawsuit. Then let's do it. That night, I drafted a demand letter with Helen's assistance. It laid out the timeline of events: the stroke, the hospitalization, the secret sale, the transfer of funds to a private account. I demanded full restitution of the $295,000 plus compensation for the undervalued sale for 500 total. Dad had 10 days to respond before I filed suit. I hit send and felt something shift inside me. For the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't just reacting, I was fighting back. The response came within 24 hours. Dad's voice on the phone was furious in a way I'd rarely heard. Have you lost your mind, Victoria? A lawsuit against your own father over a house? No, Dad. A lawsuit against someone who stole from a helpless old man while he was unconscious. Everything I did was legal. That house was falling apart. It was better for everyone. Everyone? Or just you? I have the bank records, Dad. Every penny went into your vacation fund. Silence stretched between us like a chasm. You want to destroy this family over money? You already destroyed it. I'm just trying to protect what's left. Then go ahead and sue me. But don't call me your father again. The line went dead, and I realized that some bridges, once burned, leave nothing but ashes. Mom called the next day, her voice trembling with manufactured emotion. Why are you doing this to us, Victoria? You're tearing the family apart over a house. It wasn't just a house, Mom. It was his life, his memories, his sanctuary. And Dad sold it while Grandpa was unconscious to fund your vacation. You're being dramatic. Am I? Where were you when he almost died? Where were any of you? She hung up without answering. Talia sent a text that cut deeper than I expected. You're embarrassing us. If you're mad at Dad, fine. But taking him to court? That's low, even for you, even for me. As if I was the villain in this story, Springfield County Courthouse stood like a temple of justice, its brick facade weathered by decades of family disputes, criminal trials, and civil battles. The morning of our hearing, I dressed carefully in a navy blue suit, professional, serious, unshakable. Helen walked beside me carrying boxes of evidence, sale contracts, bank transfers, power of attorney documents, and a statement from Mr. Delaney, the notary who had witnessed the POA signing 2 years earlier. Inside the courtroom, my father sat at the defendant's table wearing an expensive gray suit and the same expression he wore during business negotiations: detached, confident, slightly annoyed by the inconvenience. My mother and Talia occupied the row behind him, their faces carefully neutral. They didn't look at me when I entered. We had become strangers sharing a surname. When Grandpa was wheeled in by a court-appointed aide, he looked fragile in the oversized wheelchair, but his eyes found mine immediately. The silent communication between us was complete. We were in this together, no matter what. Judge Marcia Renner entered with the gravity befitting her position. She was a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and eyes that suggested she'd seen every variation of human failing. This court will hear the case of Holston versus Holston. Let's proceed. Helen's opening statement was masterful, calm, factual, devastating. Your Honor, this case represents a fundamental violation of trust. While William Holston lay unconscious in an intensive care unit, fighting for his life, his son Martin used a power of attorney to sell his father's home of 40 years. The sale price was significantly below market value, and every dollar of proceeds was transferred to the son's personal account. This isn't just poor judgment, it's financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. She methodically presented our evidence. The timeline showing the sale occurred during Grandpa's hospitalization. Comparative market analysis proving the property was undervalued by at least $150,000. Bank records showing the fund's final destination. The notary's statement about Dad rushing the POA signing process. Then I took the stand. My voice shook for exactly one sentence. Then it found its strength. I sat beside my grandfather's hospital bed for 13 days while the rest of my family sent me vacation photos from beach resorts. When I finally brought him home, his home was gone. The defendant didn't just sell a house, he erased a man's entire life without permission, without conscience, and without any intention of using the proceeds for my grandfather's care. I looked directly at my father as I spoke. He turned my grandfather's sanctuary into his personal ATM while that same grandfather fought for every breath. Dad's attorney, a polished man named Brennan, tried to spin the narrative. The power of attorney was valid. The sale was legal. His client acted within his rights to ensure his father's long-term financial security. But then Mr. Delaney took the stand, and his testimony cracked their defense wide open. I remember that day clearly. The elderly notary said, Mr. Martin Holston was in a hurry. William seemed tired, maybe confused. I asked if he fully understood what he was signing, but Martin interrupted. Dad trusts me, he said. Let's just get this done. I should have insisted on speaking with William privately, but I didn't. I regret that failure. The final piece of evidence was devastating in its simplicity. A bank statement showing $295,000 deposited into an account labeled Holston Family Vacation Fund. Judge Renner listened to closing arguments with the patience of someone who'd heard every excuse human nature could devise. When both sides finished, she sat in contemplative silence for several minutes. I'll issue my ruling in 2 weeks, she finally announced. Those 2 weeks felt like an eternity. Grandpa and I fell into a quiet routine at the hotel: morning walks in his wheelchair, afternoon therapy sessions, evening conversations about everything except the pending verdict. When Judge Renner's call finally came, we were sitting by the hotel room window, watching birds in the parking lot. Oak tree. Her voice over speakerphone was clear and decisive. While the power of attorney remains technically valid, the actions taken by Martin Holston, particularly conducting the sale during his father's incapacitation and using proceeds for personal benefit, constitute a clear breach of fiduciary duty. The verdict was comprehensive: full restitution of $295,000, additional compensation of $150,000 for undervaluing the property, immediate revocation of the power of attorney, and a formal statement of accountability filed with the county. Grandpa's eyes filled with tears, but he wasn't crying from sadness. I didn't think anyone would ever fight for me, he whispered. You fought for me first, I replied. I'm just returning the favor. With the recovered funds, we purchased a charming cottage on the outskirts of Springfield, not grand like the old house, but filled with light and possibility. It had a small garden, a cozy kitchen, and a front porch perfect for morning coffee. I arranged Grandpa's favorite armchair by the living room window and hung his wind chimes outside. The sound they made in the breeze was like music from another life, carrying memories forward into our new beginning. Our days found their rhythm: morning tea while reading the newspaper together, gentle gardening in the afternoon, evenings filled with stories and laughter. Grandpa's strength returned gradually, first with a walker, then with a cane, then finally short walks around the neighborhood. One evening, while I was trimming roses in our new garden, 2 familiar figures appeared at the gate. Mom and Talia stood there holding a store-bought gift box, their expressions uncertain and slightly defiant. Can we see him? Mom asked. I hesitated, then stepped aside. Inside, Grandpa looked up from his crossword puzzle. He studied them for a long moment, his face unreadable. I'm not angry anymore, he said quietly, but I'm awake now. I see things clearly. The visit was brief and awkward. They left their cookies on the kitchen counter and themselves at the front door, understanding without words that forgiveness and restoration were different things. A year has passed since we built our new life from the ashes of betrayal. Every morning, I brew peppermint tea the way Grandpa taught me. He sits on the front porch reading, occasionally calling out interesting headlines or amusing observations. The garden we planted together is thriving: roses, tomatoes, herbs, and hope growing side by side. Sometimes when the wind catches his chimes just right, I think about what we lost: not just the house, but the illusion of family unity I'd carried my entire life. But more often, I think about what we gained: the absolute certainty that love isn't defined by blood or obligation, but by who stands beside you when the darkness falls. We reclaimed more than money in that courtroom. We reclaimed dignity, respect, and the fundamental right to define family by actions rather than genetics. Some of the most important battles aren't fought for houses or inheritance, but for the principle that every person deserves protection, especially when they're most vulnerable. The true measure of family isn't found in vacation photos or Christmas cards. It's found in hospital vigils, in fighting for justice when others choose convenience, in building new dreams from the wreckage of old betrayals. Grandpa was right all those years ago. Good things take patience, but the best things: love, loyalty, And the courage to stand up for what's right, those are worth whatever it takes to protect them. And that's a promise I'll keep for the rest of my life.